Welcome into The Pulse on Fox 2, where we focus on all things people, power, and politics. We're talking to one man who's running for the 7th District open congressional seat about what's behind his campaign. A conservative and Democrat you know well, debating whether President Trump's tariff plans will actually help. But first, some of the political stories making headlines right now, beginning with this. Questions continue to swirl around the Jeffrey Epstein controversy. And now his former girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, is offering to testify before Congress with a few conditions. She's asking for immunity from future prosecution for her testimony. She also wants the interview to happen away from the prison where she's currently serving that 20-year sentence. The conviction stems from conspiring with Epstein to sexually abuse underage girls. Maxwell is also asking that she gets any questions from Congress before she testifies. In a letter, Maxwell's attorneys say if her demands aren't met, she'll be forced to invoke her Fifth Amendment rights. Maxwell has also asked the Supreme Court to review her conviction, saying she didn't get a fair shake, a fair trial. As for the Epstein files themselves, President Trump is calling the buzz around it a hoax, even though he previously promised to release them. In the meantime, President Trump is calling on Israel to get more aid into Gaza. He joins a growing number of world leaders calling attention to the starvation-related deaths happening there as this war does continue. Dozens of hunger-related deaths have been reported, and aid groups say it's only going to get worse without more access to food and medicine that they need so badly right now. This week, President Trump gave strong indications the U.S. will deepen its involvement, but administration officials say the president is still working closely with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
There's no break between the Prime Minister of Israel and the President. Their relationship, I think, to be stronger than it's ever been.
And some of those kids that's real starvation stuff. I see it. And you can't fake that.
Neighboring countries like Jordan and the UAE have stepped up their humanitarian airdrops, but they say it's not even close to being enough. They also say ending the blockade is the only way to feed everyone who needs food. In the meantime, the Israelis say they'll allow more aid, but have no intention of lifting that blockade. Israeli officials are also denying reports of widespread famine in Gaza. And when it comes to the issues in the Middle East, the UK says it will recognize Palestine as a state starting in September if Israel doesn't agree to a ceasefire. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer making those remarks today, saying Israel must commit to long-term peace and allow the UN to bring in aid to Gaza. Today's announcement comes days after France announced it'll recognize Palestine as a state and plans to formalize that at the UN General Assembly in September. Right now, more than 140 countries recognize a Palestinian state. The Trump administration looking to make more changes when it comes to the Environmental Protection Agency. They're now looking to revoke a 2009 declaration that determined that carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases endanger public health and welfare. The so-called endangerment finding is the legal underpinning of a host of climate regulations. EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin says the repeal would be the largest deregulatory action in the history of our country. The EPA proposal must go through a lengthy review process, including public comment before it's finalized. Environmental groups are expected to challenge the rule change in court. And this week, climate activists, as you can imagine, they gathered alongside some lawmakers in Illinois to speak out against the proposed changes.
I want my grandsons to be able to breathe. I want my grandsons to be able to swim in the water, in lakes and in rivers, or to be able to boat or whatever they need. I want them to be able to breathe clean air. And with this administration, there's no guarantees of any of this.
Now, we should tell you this all comes as the Trump administration continues to downsize the federal government. This month, the EPA announced a 23% reduction in its workforce. And from reductions to something the Trump administration wants to see more of, talking about religion at federal buildings. It's now encouraging workers to talk about their beliefs, even persuading others about the, quote, correctness of their religious views. A memo from the Office of Personnel Management, known as the government's Human Resource Department, says the order is protected by the First Amendment. The memo also says employees can display things like Bibles and Stars of David at their desks. And while the administration is encouraging the religious talk at work, it also says agencies can still limit employees' speech, such as banning certain posters or requiring tasks to be done during office hours. That's going to get a lot of buzz. The national debt is currently at more than $36 trillion. It's a number many people want to see get knocked down. Turns out there's an app for that, sort of. The Treasury Department is boosting a little-known program in the hopes it will grow. The department is accepting donations through Venmo and PayPal to help pay down the national debt. People can also donate via their bank account, credit, or debit cards. Payments can be made at pay.gov. Now, over the last 29 years, Americans have donated more than $67 million to the Treasury. And you know, it's interesting because as soon as we put this question up there, everyone said, oh, this is this administration, or here we are in this day and age. This has been happening for almost 3 decades. As we always say, this show is about you. We wanted to know what you think about all of this. And so many of you shared your thoughts online. Here's a look at what some of you told me. Jackie says, hard pass. I donate enough through taxes, which they always seem to squander. Terry says, already gave. Thank you. Wanda, if you donate to that, I lose all respect for you. And Dave Santia says, are the donations tax deductible? There are so many people who have comments about this. If you have a comment about it, let us know. We, of course, want to have you join our conversation. Just scan that QR code on your screen to send us an email to thepulse@fox.com. We'd love to hear from you. Still ahead, the European Union agreeing to a trade deal with the U.S. We're talking about what it could mean for our wallets. And we're talking about the latest in the Epstein saga with a conservative lawyer and former Democratic state rep. Sherry and Terry are in the hot seat. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. Welcome back to The Pulse, Metro Detroit's only nightly political talk show. Our next 2 guests are familiar faces here in Studio C. Joining us tonight, former Democratic state rep and current school board member Sherry Gay-Dagnago and conservative attorney Terry Johnson. We call it the Sherry and Perry show, don't we, here?
Terry or Perry?
Well, what did I just say?
You said Perry.
I said, excuse me. When Perry Johnson is here, we call it the Sherry and Perry show. Sherry and Terry show here tonight.
That's right.
Look, when you can rhyme like that.
We have to make sure we have
thing.
people that rhyme with Sherry.
Absolutely. It's one of the big requirements. But another requirement is to be passionate about what you believe. And what you believe right now is that perhaps the Trump administration is doing a good job with so much of what they're working on. I want to begin with the European Union. Terry, these trade deals are starting to come together. We heard, of course, Japan with an encouraging move, $550 billion worth of investment that could be going back. And then now we're hearing about the EU. What are your thoughts on these deals that President Trump is making?
I mean, I think long term, I think they're going to be good for the country. You know, we want to make sure we've got fair trade between everyone. For years, it's always been the United States giving, giving, giving. And it's finally time for our taxpayers to sit back and say, listen, we want a fair economy throughout the world. So I think, despite all the media, despite all the negativity, it's finally coming together. It's been about 6 months, but 6 or 7 months, I think it's a good 6 or 7 months.
With due respect, the media is simply covering what's happening here. And as with all stories, there are multiple perspectives. And many people out there are saying, look, when you put tariffs on other countries, you're not hurting those countries alone. You're hurting consumers here in the U.S. Do you see any truth to that?
Temporarily, yes. Okay, I've got a minor in economics, so I really understand how these things work. And the interesting thing that people forget is that eventually these things go down. If we don't, make markets for our own people to have our goods, for example, cars or steel or other things over in Europe, then we're going to kill our own selves if we don't do those things.
Sherry, do you think that Democrats are in a position right now, because of how divisive our country has been in the last few years, that they simply can't see good news from the Trump administration?
Can I answer that and say no?
Well, as a Democrat, do you believe that
you want to say no to that?
Do you believe that Democrats are able to see progress or give things a shot with this administration?
Roop, in all honesty, here's one of the situations where I really, certainly, I always try and be honest, but it's really important to talk about the fact that both parties, unfortunately, always have to point fingers and say, I got you, it's wrong, it's terrible. And in some instances, I mean, we have to find a place where we can find common ground and look at this thing for what it is. I won't say that it's perfection, but when you think about the reduction to 15%, where the numbers were a lot higher before, for those who like to drive Mercedes and not a Cadillac like me.
I have an American car.
Do you? Oh, that's good. I'm glad you drive American. but the European cars will now be somewhat, I guess, a little bit more affordable for those who like to drive them. I am a UAW girl through and through, so I drive American only, but also the fact that there will be some reciprocity with respect to investments that are coming from Europe and investments in energy. And perhaps if we take a look at it and understand some of the nuances, maybe we might be able to invest and make some money as well. So I think we have to start looking at it, you know, from a lens of parity and some fairness.
And there has not been a great deal of parity when it comes to trading, especially with the big partners out there. Would you say that's the truth?
Oh, absolutely, it's the truth. And I think while we may not like some of the methodologies, you know, I think the jury is still out for what the impact might be. But I think people need to start paying attention and try and find ways, talk to their financial planners, call Gail Perry Mason, do something, but try to find a way to capitalize on this opportunity.
This is really important. So is obviously the news coming out of the international world right now. And I want to hit on that a little bit with this administration. You know, Terry, when you take a look at what's happening right now with the situation in the Middle East, you understand what's going on with Gaza. Then you have what's happening in Ukraine. This war just drags on. And there was a kind of a notion that President Trump was buddy-buddy with Putin for a long time. It seems like he's cracking that old stereotype by saying, let's reduce the number of days that we're going to wait before we come out with secondary sanctions, essentially, to Russia. Is this a good move from the president?
I think it's a great move. And again, you know, you talk about the buddy-buddy. I think people, you can get along and disagree, right? I think we see it all the time. In this particular case, I believe President Trump is doing what's in the best interest of the United States. Putin's doing what's in the best interest of Russia. Sometimes those two collide. But when Donald Trump says, again, you look at it economically, we have the economic power to do what we need to do to break Russia, and Russia is in a very bad economic place right now. They cannot continue this war. They cannot continue to go on.
And so now President Trump, Sherry, is saying instead of waiting 50 days to see if Mr. Putin comes to the table, we'll give him much less than that, 10 to 12 days perhaps, or something like that, 10 to 20 days. Do you think Putin will come to the table scared this time?
Based on the comments that I've read and I heard, absolutely not. He says that Russia has its own clock. They're not bowing down to Trump's 12-day demand. Circle the day, do what you want, but it won't be Russia that bows in the 12 days.
Even with the economic sanctions that are being threatened against that country.
Listen, I think he called out Trump's hypocrisy even, continuing to interfere in Ukraine and not really negotiating good faith. I think he's seeing that Trump is loyal to no one but himself.
Why should people care about the Jeffrey Epstein case? I want to touch on that as we wrap up this segment. Why is that important to the American people?
So I think more than anything, we have to not make this a partisan issue. We have to make sure that the survivors stay at the center of this conversation. Those are the individuals that deserve transparency, deserve justice, and we're almost making mockery of their suffering if we don't do this the right way.
And so now Ghislaine Maxwell is saying she may actually testify in Congress if given the opportunity in exchange for obviously immunity. Terry, is that helpful to the American people? Is that helpful for the victims who remain at the center of all of this?
Well, again, here's the thing. I agree with both sides. I think we at some point need to put an end to this. Is there a list? I don't know. But, you know, her testifying, what is she going to testify to? She's already in prison, right? I understand the immunity portion, but again, the bigger question comes down to what else does she want to testify? And if it's something that's going to get rid of time for her, commute her sentence, or even pardon her, then that
What if it's damaging to big people in this country? And by the way, damaging to past presidents, damaging to current Hollywood stars or our current president? Is that reason to bring her into the spotlight?
You know, if they've done the action, then they should be responsible for what they've done. But we want to make sure when you say damaging, I want to just get this one point out. Just because you're on a list or you're mentioned, you know, these billionaires and all these folks hang around each other. That doesn't mean that someone's done something. That's a lot different than saying, yep, I know Rup Raj, who's a great guy. That doesn't mean that we've engaged in some illegal activity, you know.
There's correlation through relationships.
There's a difference in just knowing someone casually and hanging at Mar-a-Lago together. And so,
but they're billionaires, and these guys all get...
But Sherry, Rosie O'Donnell, Bill Clinton, and Hillary Clinton were all buddies with Jeffrey Epstein. And the same, I guess you could say, the same dubious cloud could be cast on anyone. But the bottom line is we know for a fact that even the Wall Street Journal is reporting there has been no indication that the current president has been involved in anything that's been nefarious or illegal. Knowing someone doesn't mean.
I agree with that.
That's my only point.
Yeah, I
Go
agree.
ahead.
I agree with that. But I'm just saying no one should be protected if they were involved. And that's why the public has the right to know.
I agree with
Well,
that.
the public should know, and right now we know that even if the grand jury files come out, that's one thing, but we also know the White House and Pam Bondi have other information that more people want to see, including some Trump supporters. We'll have to watch this one, as we will, very carefully. Sherry and Terry, the Sherry and Terry Show. We thank you so much for joining us here on the
Thank
Pulse
you,
tonight.
Rube.
Good to
My
see you all.
pleasure.
Always a pleasure. 2026 is going to be a big election year. You know that here in Michigan. Voters choosing a new governor as well as members of Congress. Coming up, we're sitting down with a former Navy SEAL who's hoping to represent our state's 7th district. You're watching The Pulse here on Fox 2. Welcome back to The Pulse, where we focus on all things people, power, and politics. And as you know, we have some big elections next year that will involve all three of those elements. One of the races, Michigan's 7th Congressional District, which covers Lansing and some of the surrounding areas. And as we are doing with so many of these candidates, of course, everyone that wants to join us, they are on because they have a message that the entire state needs to hear. Matt Masden is one of those guys, a former Navy SEAL who's running as a Democrat. And it's good to see you, Matt. Thanks for joining us.
I really appreciate being here.
So you have 2 sons. We've been talking about that. They play hockey. You have a family. Running for political office to become a congressperson seems like the least conducive thing to do as a father. Why make that sacrifice? Why is that so important?
The country is the one answer, right? And so I'm somebody who puts service over party, and I really want to see the country succeed. So America's worth it. It's the greatest country in the world, and it's one of the things that we want to see do really well.
Now, I want to talk a little bit about your military background, because that's an important thing to keep in mind. We're seeing more people with military backgrounds enter these races and enter these chambers.
So great.
Talk about the importance of that for you.
Yeah, it's a really, really big deal. And so veterans are somebody who puts mission over anything else almost, right? So you're putting it over party, you're putting it over finger pointing or blame, and so you really are there to get things done. And the more veterans we have in Congress, I think the more that will get done. There's a lot of finger pointing and blame in Congress. It feels a little broken, and so we want to see some common sense folks get in there and see if they can fix things.
Let's talk about the big, beautiful bill that obviously just passed. You're a Democrat, but when you take a look at some of the things in the bill, it's a long bill. It's a big one.
It's a huge bill.
There are many things that we talked about, some things we didn't talk about. Is there anything in that bill that you would have voted yes on had you been in the House?
There's so much in it. I'm sure there are some things that would pass if they were on their own. But this is one of those things where I think if you're voting for the bill, you're voting against the district, really, because so many people are falling off of Medicaid. It's making everybody's health care costs more expensive. And this is one of the number one issue that I hear as I shake hands across the district is that the cost of living is going up, 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 and the wages aren't keeping up. So adding cost to healthcare does nothing but make everybody's lives harder, and it's not helpful for the people in the 7th.
You're running as a Democrat. This party has gone through the ringer and back.
Yes.
Every time I interview a Democrat, I ask them this question because I think it's an important answer to hear from you. How do you redefine yourself as the next iteration of the Democratic Party in your candidacy?
One thing I really want to bring to the table is kind of a warrior spirit. The SEAL teams are a place where we fight very hard to get things done, and I want to bring that same fight to Congress. And so where I see maybe the Democratic Party hasn't quite put that fight first and foremost in what they're doing, and I want to see that happen this time around.
Where did they get it wrong the most in the presidential election in your mind?
I think border security was an issue. I really think border security is national security, right? And so we need to know who's coming in. I think it's great to have more legal pathways and other visas for people to work. And I think we need to know who's coming across the border. And then the other thing I would say is they put social issues front and center, and I would put economic issues front and center, where people are saying things are too expensive, healthcare, housing, groceries, childcare. Those are the things that add to people's costs, and that's the thing they're talking about at the kitchen table. That's the thing the party should be focused on.
As a Democrat, you go out there, you're going to talk to a lot of people in mid-Michigan and in parts of this area as well. What do you tell a Trump supporter out there about why they should vote for you, even though you're not a Republican?
Right. Like, this is the district where it's a 50-50 place, right? I don't think bagging on Trump is a winning philosophy here. I really think you say country over party, and you say, I swore an oath to the Constitution, I'm going to do the same thing in Congress, right? In the SEAL teams, we didn't ask people if they were Republicans or Democrats. We said, like, do you have the grit and the heart and the toughness to get this job done? And that's what I want to see get done in Congress. So whether you're on the left or you're on the right, I think I'm the right person for your vote.
When you look at what's going on in Congress right now, what's going wrong that you could help make right?
I think people are flying to the polls and they're really pointing fingers at each other rather than looking for places to shake hands, right? And there are currently 6 Navy SEALs in Congress. They're all on the Republican side. It would be really nice to have a 7th, right, who's on the left, who could reach across the aisle and shake hands to get some things done. So I would be the first Democrat Navy SEAL in the House ever.
What's the most immediate need that the District 7 has right now in your mind that's not being served?
Anything to reduce costs, right? As I travel the district and spend time at hockey games with my kids and talk to all the hockey parents, people are really concerned about the cost of living. And when we go to Culver's afterwards in Brighton, and for a family of 4, my family, I have 4 people in my family, it's $50 to get lunch, right? It's $12.50 per value meal, and for the 4 of us to get food, it's $50. That's outrageous to me. And as healthcare costs get up, people are going to have less discretionary income to do those kind of things.
When you look at some of the big issues that the Republicans have really taken on and in your mind gotten right, would you say, when you mentioned the border, that the fight against fentanyl is one of the biggest things that families should be proud of that this country is fighting against?
Yeah, I think that's a super huge win. I think border security is important. Enforcement, we're enforcing the laws we've had on the books for a while, and I think that's good. I think the way we enforce them also matters, right? I think you need to treat people with kindness and professionalism and respect. And I'm one of those people who I think you can be tough and compassionate at the same time, right? Like, you don't have to be a tough guy and throw people around to prove that you're tough. You can be nice to people and get the job done.
What kind of legislation would you work on right away to make sure that the people who are the most dangerous are taken out of this country and those who are contributing members of our society but yet undocumented remain?
That's a good question. In terms of, I would go after the criminals, right? If there's people that we know that are criminals, we can go for them. If not, like, really, it's about securing the border and having nobody else come across that we don't know who they are.
Matt Mazdim running for the 7th District here in the U.S. Congress. We thank you for your time.
I appreciate it.
Good to see you. We appreciate you. And we do thank you for joining us here on The Pulse. Remember, if there's a topic you'd like us to cover or you have a question for us, maybe it's a fact check, just email me at thepulse@fox.com. I'm Roop Raj. As always, it was great to be with you.